We are entering our villain era. Hello, family, and welcome back to Vibe Check. As we discussed last week, we are all going through a deep period of transition. And so maybe you're also feeling it. Maybe you're feeling a pull towards something new. Maybe you are unraveling old layers of yourself. Maybe you are shedding old relationships, questioning environments that once felt safe, or maybe you're feeling less and less aligned with spaces and identities that you used to move in. And if that's the case, then you also might be navigating the discomfort that comes with being misunderstood. So let's take a deep breath here, because I want to give you space to just be yourself, to not need to put on a face or an act or to perform. Because the truth is that when we evolve, not everybody around us is going to understand what's happening. Some may not agree with how we're shifting. Others around us may just resist our growth because it forces them to look at their own stagnation. But here's what I need you to know. Not everybody is going to understand you. Not everyone is meant to understand you, and that is okay. Gaia, that is literally a candle, my love, that is on fire. No! Sorry, guys. We are joined by Gaia today. Gaia is just over a year old, so she is very much still a baby. And so I might be pulling her out of stuff today while we're talking, but she's going to hang out. So I know this feeling of being misunderstood intimately because I spent a lot of my life wanting to be understood. And maybe it's the Aquarius in me. We're known as the aloof weirdos of the zodiac. But beyond that, I feel like I've always just been different. You know, I grew up in the stereotypical too black for the white kids, too white for the black kids kind of thing. I went to predominantly white schools, but I lived in an all black neighborhood. And so that was always just an interesting sort of paradox, right? And at school, I experienced so many microaggressions that at the time I didn't even have a name for. In high school, I got bullied for reasons that made absolutely no sense to me. It felt like it didn't matter who I was as a person. All that mattered was how I was perceived, and I really had no control over that. So by the time I got to college, I just really wanted to be liked. I feel like I was always fighting to be seen or to prove that I was worthy. It wasn't just in my friendships. Even in my dating life, I went through phases of just trying to fit into certain molds and like questioning my identity even, and just wondering why I never felt like enough. I wasn't stereotypically feminine. I wasn't a girl's girl. I really didn't fit into any neat boxes. And for a long time, I thought maybe that was the problem. But here's what I learned, and what I really want you to understand. That doesn't mean you need to change. It means that there is a large invitation for you to release the weight of trying to be understood by everybody and trying to be understood by the people who were never meant to see you clearly. And I think this is especially true during times of transition, because when we start moving differently, when we start making choices that prioritize our well-being, and when we start breaking cycles and stepping into our own power, some people aren't going to know what to do with that. Like, they're not going to know what to do with this more enlightened, more embodied, more self-assured, just this different version of yourself that you're becoming. And some are going to project their fears onto you. Some are going to guilt trip you for changing. Some are going to distance themselves, not because you've necessarily done anything wrong, but because your growth is confronting for them. And that's another thing I need you to know, is that their discomfort is not your burden to carry, my love. Their misunderstanding is a reflection of where they are on their journey, not a reflection of who you are. We live in a world that conditions us to be palatable. We live in a world that conditions us to seek approval and to shrink ourselves into whatever version of acceptable will get us the least amount of resistance. And from a young age, many of us, especially those from marginalized communities, we learn that our safety, our access, and sometimes even our survival depends on how well we can conform. We learn that being too outspoken, too bold, too unapologetically ourselves can come with consequences, because Because the reality is, authenticity isn't just disruptive, it is dangerous in a world that punishes those of us who refuse to fall in line. And we see this playing out in real time, right? People are being punished and silenced, even killed for even daring to speak out against injustice. In a world built on power imbalances, simply existing as your full self, especially when you exist at the intersections of race and gender and queerness, disability, or any other marginalized identity, that can really be seen as an act of defiance. And when you call out harm, when you demand accountability, when you refuse to accept systems of oppression as they are, then you become a threat. Not because you're wrong, but because your truth disrupts the narrative that keeps those systems in place. Even in spaces where we should be free to be ourselves, like on social media, there comes an expectation to perform. There comes an expectation to present a version of ourselves that is likable and digestible and free of any flaws. And the danger that comes from social media, especially platforms like Instagram, for example, where things are highly based on aesthetic and packaging and branding and marketability, these platforms have turned authenticity into a brand where being real is only acceptable if it's aesthetically pleasing and it doesn't make anyone too uncomfortable. And so we're pushed to curate ourselves, right? We're pushed to post only the most acceptable parts of our existence and to avoid saying the wrong thing for the fear of being cast out or the fear of being canceled. Cancel culture. Let's talk about cancel culture, because I feel like cancel culture has now created an environment where people are more afraid of being called out than they are willing to engage in real transformative conversations. And instead of allowing room for learning and for growth, for the nuance of human imperfection, I feel like we are now so quick to discard people entirely with the quickness. And don't get me wrong, sometimes that sort of canceling is called for, but other times I feel like it robs us of opportunities to grow alongside one another and to be able to teach one another and to be able to hold one another accountable in healthy and productive ways. My cat's fur is everywhere, but no one is perfect. Not everyone has all the answers, Sway, literally. And yet the world pressures us to present this illusion of perfection, whether that's through our politics or through our beliefs, or even just the ways that we show up in our daily lives. But authenticity is not about being perfect. Authenticity is about being willing to stand in your truth, even when that truth is messy, even when that truth is inconvenient, even when it makes other people uncomfortable. Because being real in a world that rewards conformity is always going to ruffle some feathers. And when you refuse to perform, when you refuse to make yourself smaller, some people are going to resist, some people are going to project, some will try to force you to fit back into that box that makes sense to them. But again, that is not your burden to carry. I think right now, so many of us are stepping into a version of ourselves that prioritizes self-honoring choices over people-pleasing choices. And that means that to some, we are entering our villain era, but in the most spiritual way. Because if we're going to be real here, if you've ever had to set a boundary with someone who used to benefit from you not having any, you already know you're going to be the bad guy in their story. Like point blank, period. If you've ever chosen yourself over an unhealthy situation, you already know that some people are not going to like that. But you are not here to make everybody comfortable. You were put here to be you. So if you are in a season where not only are you transforming, but you're also feeling misunderstood, I want to offer you some ways to reframe that. Instead of, if people don't understand me, then something's wrong with me, maybe you try reframing it as, my authenticity is a gift and not everybody will be able to receive it, and that is okay. Instead of, I need to explain myself so people don't misunderstand, try, I don't owe everyone an explanation. My truth will resonate with those who are ready for it. Instead of, being misunderstood means I'm not doing something right, try, being misunderstood means I'm honoring my truth, not someone else's expectations of me. And maybe the biggest shift of all is embracing the idea that being the villain in someone's story doesn't mean that you're wrong. Sometimes, just by choosing yourself, you become the antagonist in someone else's narrative. But the truth is that you're not here to be the hero of everyone else's story. You're here to be the main character of your own. So if you're feeling like an outcast, if you're questioning yourself because people don't seem to get you, let this be your permission slip to stop carrying that weight. You don't need to be liked by everyone. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You just need to be you. Because the right people, the ones who truly see you, the more you're authentically yourself, the more they're going to be able to find you. And more importantly, you'll find yourself. And so take a deep breath with me. Release the need to be understood as you exhale. And just let this truth settle into your spirit, because you are whole. You are so whole, and you are worthy, and you are not alone. I am sending you so much love. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for sharing space with me. If this resonated with you, be sure to share this message with someone who might need to hear it today. Subscribe if you haven't already so you can join this community. And until next time, take care of yourselves. Bye, guys.